I was the moderator and straight man for most of the
It was classic.
Yeah.
So how long have you been doing this in the Anchorage area? Because we've got 250,000 people that live here, 60 grizzly bears, 200 black bears, 1,000 moose, a couple packs of wolves, and my guess is that the 250,000 people are more the issue sometimes.
People are the problem, from my perspective, not from everyone's. But yeah, the animals mostly behave themselves. I've been doing it for 16 years, this job.
And you're not, you know, it's so funny that you would go into biology and dealing with animals, but you have to deal with people so much. There was an issue that came up, I believe, in 2005, and I want to ask you about it because it was kind of a big deal at the time. I mean, people were chatting about it. That you had said that you might, quote, beat the crap out of someone for dumping fish in the middle of the city. Can you explain, I mean,
how that came about?
Was it because you don't want them to waste fish? I don't think so. I mean, well, the frustration level, I'm sure, was pretty maxed out.
Well, I wasn't that frustrated, but I wanted to make a point. And the point was that we had this every summer where people drive to the end of the road in town and dump out trash, including edible stuff, including fish carcasses, guts and heads and stuff like that. And it had happened twice in one day, once next to a school bus stop, in Bear Valley, where there's lots of brown bears, and the other time kind of in an undeveloped subdivision, end of the road, just a big pile of 30, 40, 50 pounds of fish cuts. And so I called up one of the reporters of the Daily News and kind of told him about it, and he threw me this big softball pitch. He said, well, you know, what are you going to do about it? I said, well, I can't do anything. It's littering at this point. There's not a bear on it. I can pick it up, but I'm kind of tired of picking it up. So he said, well, what would you like to do about it? And I said, I'd like to catch the assholes and beat the crap out of them, without actually meaning that I would really do that, of course. But, you know, it was just making a point.
Right.
And Doug, the reporter, actually asked me at the point, he said, did you really say that? Can I quote you? And I said, well, yeah, go ahead, quote me. So after that, I wasn't allowed to say the word bear for 6 months officially. I couldn't say the word bear. I wasn't terminated, I wasn't reassigned, but I couldn't say the word bear for 6 months, and I couldn't work with bears. That was fun, actually.
You couldn't say the word bear?
I was not allowed to say the word bear. The commissioner said I couldn't say the word bear for 6 months. Yeah.
Right, because then there wouldn't be any bear problems
So
if you couldn't say it, and then they wouldn't be on
20 people
piles.
a day would call up about bear problems, and I'd say, Rick sent it, and they say, I have a bear on my deck, and I say, well, you have to talk to Jesse. Transfer. But it worked. We handled it.
Did you ever get to beat anybody up?
No, and I didn't want to. I'm not a violent guy.
I get that, but you know, how many interactions are people having? I know my daughter was riding her horse up on a hillside, saw a brown bear at one part of her ride, another part of her ride, saw a black bear who had run her cubs up the tree and was just watching her real close. And you know, I'm worried about her learning to drive a car. And here she's having different bear interactions.
Driving a car is much more dangerous.
Exactly, exactly. So how many interactions are people really having in Anchorage? I think it's part of the high life of living here.
Who knows? Because most people, you know, enjoy them, or at least tolerate the wildlife encounters they have, and they don't call us. So that's good. That's a good thing. Most people in Anchorage really do tolerate even having moose and brown bears and wolves and stuff in town. Most people do. But there's a significant minority that think this is people habitat, and that we shouldn't really have any big animals in it. I think most people disagree, though, in Anchorage.
Those people should move to St. Louis or Kansas City, or pick a sterile sort of from wildlife place. Because, I mean, the whole idea here is it's a big wildlife. We're 5 minutes from Alaska. You can get there from Anchorage. And so to really have these interactions, I think, is really valuable. I know I tried to get a hold of you last year, and I actually ended up calling. I actually called 911, and I said, I can't get a hold of Fish and Game. And it was like 4:30 in the morning. And there was this moose in my front yard that was wheezing, this horrible wheezing sound. And it was covered with these huge
warts.
Now I know they're warts. I didn't know moose got STDs, but apparently. And it was, I mean, it was all over its eyes and its mouth and nose, and I mean, it was everywhere. And it was horrific, and it was just like making this horrible noise. And I really should get a copy of the 911 call, because I'm like, well, it's right outside my window. I'll open the window, and it wouldn't move. That was the other thing. So I opened my window, I'm holding the phone, I'm like, can you hear it? And she's like, I can kind of hear it. And then I took a picture and emailed it to her, and then I was like, look, can I just shoot it because the thing's in pain? And she said, well, if you do, you have to keep it. I was like, I wouldn't eat this thing. I wouldn't, you know, like having this whole conversation that you can't explain to people that live in the places like St. Louis.
Well, I have these conversations frequently with people.
What is
But
with
you
those
can actually,
warts?
you can eat them. You can eat them. I wouldn't eat the warts, but you can eat the moose. They're fine. It's just a surface. It's a skin thing. And it's transmissible to moose, but
they're not going to get to mate.
People can't.
Nobody would mate with that.
Yeah, that's not many dates for a moose like that. Yeah.
What other calls do you get? What's some of the more exciting calls you've got?
Well, there's the run-of-the-mill bear in the trash and moose, between the front door and the car. I don't know. They're all exciting to me. I just like to talk about animals. But you get bat calls and squirrels in the fireplace and pigeons on the balcony and anything to do with wildlife.
Really? And some of them are you like, really? Why is this a problem? Or are you just letting me know?
The crazy ones are the people that are either delusional or are on something that are really seeing something that's not there. Yeah, that's the funny thing. Cheshire cat type animals and monkeys those are strange. But even those are fun. Yeah, sometimes
like
people
you get calls for people's hallucinations.
Yeah, sometimes. Yeah, there's something under the bed, kind of a thing. Yeah, the cat under the bed that's eating the pills because the pills aren't around anymore. That kind of stuff. Yeah, not very many, fortunately, but those are fun.
Oh my gosh, I had no idea. You're like the crazy call too.
Yeah. The Dr. Ruth of animal calls, something like that.
There's a moose mating in my mailbox. You're like, oh, you've got mail. A male with horns, specifically. So when last year there were some issues with wolves eating dogs. Is this really a huge problem? Is this, I mean,
well, if it's your dog, it's definitely a problem. And then we worry about it too. It's wolves have pretty much always eaten dogs in the Anchorage area, usually only one or two a year at the most. I mean, and these are dogs that people on the edge of town will get home and they'll let the dog out to frisk, play in the woods. And sometimes they're nailed by wolves, and especially in the wintertime. But in the last few years, it's been more people with dogs either on heel or on a leash where the wolves have come up and kind of accosted the dog. And that's a dangerous precedent. We don't like to see that happening because the next step in the evolution of that is maybe the wolf will next decide to chase a person or something, and that's not allowable. We really can't let that happen.
Well, when we're sharing a habitat, and I think a lot of people don't want to acknowledge that they were here first, kind of thing. And how do we accommodate as well?
People all the time tell me, actually the animals weren't here first because I'm 45 or 50 or 60 years old, and I'm older than any animal in Anchorage. So actually, I was here first. That's what people tell me sometimes. It's an interesting chain of logic. But no, I hear what you're saying, and it is people habitat. It's a city, and for the most part, we deal with bear encounters and sometimes bear attacks, and we don't like to stigmatize a bear or just knee-jerk reaction. Oh, a bear charged somebody, we should go out and shoot the bear. We don't do that. But wolves are an interesting thing because they run in packs, and they're very smart, and there's this progression that they make. And at some point, we worry that, and it has happened a few times where wolves actually attacked, and even killed people. We just worry that a pack of animals like that could potentially do some damage if it gets to that point. So we get a little itchy at that point, more so than with bears or even moose, which moose are the most dangerous big animal other than people in Anchorage. But more people have been killed in Anchorage by moose than anything else, really, except for Canada geese. Geese are actually the most dangerous wild animal in Anchorage.
Because of the
AWACS flight.
The AWACS flight, that's right.
But wasps are more dangerous because I think more people probably die or have serious reactions from wasps and other things. So, if you're afraid to go in the woods because you're allergic to wasps, you prepare for that. You take your EpiPen or something.
That's right.
What I tell people is the same with bears. If you're afraid of bears, carry pepper spray, walk in a group. Don't stop enjoying the outdoors just because there are bears out there. Because the bears aren't everywhere all the time. They're just some places, and you can kind of avoid them for the most part. don't walk on a salmon stream in the middle of the night when the salmon are spawning.
Well, I want to talk about that when we're going to take a break. I want to talk about that when we come back and take some questions from our audience. I really want to find out if people encounter a bear, what's the best thing to do? Having encountered lots of bears in my life, I don't think that any two of them were alike. So, but to get your best take on that. So we'll be right back with more Up North. All right, welcome back, welcome back. I'm so glad you're staying with us. We have questions from the audience, a whole bunch of them, for Rick Sennett, which I'm so glad he's here because I don't have to call him in the middle of the night and ask him a question. What do you think about